how do people come into this understanding and that knowing of when I eat this food, it's good for my brain, and when I eat that food, it's bad for my brain?
So thank you for sharing all that. And everybody, what I kind of listened to is Lindsay was painting a really nice picture, connection between a lot of things I think many of us think about and most Americans struggle with, which is caffeine tolerance and dependence. Coffee gets us going. It hits dopamine and serotonin, all the good stuff. All the studies say it's great for us. We start to sweat a little bit. We get stuff done. If we're in a bad mood, we feel better. If we need to get more done, we do. Maybe we get a little anxiety. And alcohol, we live in a culture that worships alcohol, whether it's your, wine connoisseur or an IPAophile or you're a mixologist. There are a lot of different ways to have a lot of drinks a week, and usually drinks daily for a lot of people. And then there's a lot of genetic connection and a lot of connection between sugar cravings and alcohol, and I'll call alcohol use disorder. We always throughout my career call it addiction or dependence, right? And I really like alcohol use disorder. We're really trying to destigmatize it because there's so many different tools. And oftentimes people think, oh, the only thing is AA, and to stop AA works for a lot of people. It's free. I would point out it's in every community, AA, and going through AA and working the steps it's like free psychotherapy. I highly recommend it. But there are also all kinds of other things like naltrexone. But I would actually take one step back that Lindsay's describing. She made significant changes in her health. I'd want to hear as a clinician, what was happening and how was she feeling at the best? Was there a period before this baking bender? And then I think something happened to Lindsay. My first association, because kind of what happened to me a few weeks ago, revolved around the Afghanistan withdrawal. And while I'm not in a military family, I guess I'm in a somewhat military family. I guess, I don't know why I said it. I am of a somewhat military family, having lost individuals in World War II in my family, and both my father and grandfather being in the Navy. And so I don't, and that might not be it for you, but I think sometimes when there's that uptick, we start to crave alcohol, sugar, baked goods, pies, right? Sometimes that has to do sugar cravings, I think, a little bit with an edge of depression. And there's some theories that's not having enough tryptophan. Like sometimes there's like a lot of like meat or high tryptophan foods followed by sugar, which does increase tryptophan uptake into the brain. And anytime you do that, you increase serotonin production. And then you increase melatonin production. So, but I think I would want to know is, if I were with my clinical hat on, Lindsay, is sort of what's going on dynamically with you as an individual, and to think about that psychology is resting on top of this physiology. And as, let's say that my theory or idea was right, there was something recently that really is starting to trouble and disturb you, that your brain is kind of thinking like alcohol, like where's my wine, alcohol. Also, you hit an anniversary 1 year. Alcoholics will tell you, and not saying you're one, but people who struggle with alcohol use disorder really tell you like anniversaries are dangerous, because after you do a year, you're like, it's where we all love the month. Sober October, you're like 30 days. Like, that's great, but that's not sobriety. Sobriety is a real process. So I would, and then I think there's, to work the nutritional psychiatry piece, everybody. So all that stuff's really interesting. The alcohol use is really interesting. And then as a nutritional psychiatrist, I think, how do you reframe some of these things for Lindsay in terms of giving her some of that experience of either sweetness, pleasure? I'd much rather her have, if she's someone or one of my patients struggling with alcohol, or I treat a lot of physicians, and as they struggle with alcohol, it's really serious. You want to give them good alternatives. Like, I'd rather have some healthy pie, and then I think, well, how do we make the healthiest pie? And to think if that begins to appeal to Lindsay, like there are these really great chocolate nut torts made primarily with egg whites that I think are really interesting. We have an old family recipe I'd love to share with you, Lindsay. And then there's, I think, ways, like in one of my books, there's a dark chocolate avocado mousse. So you're getting some real brain food, really, get high nutrient density food. You're talking about the numbers. I have 12 power players. There's foods and I don't really like those lists, but as the people who kind of help me shape these ideas point out, like it's got to be specific.